All right, we're going to be going live here in just a few minutes. Conversations with Asha and Steve. I'm just waiting for my co-host, who's really the superstar of the whole thing, Dr. Asha Prasad, to join me. So I'm just hanging out. Wish I knew some good show tunes. I could sing some show tunes to you guys, but no, that would be weird. Super weird. Plus, would reveal I'm tone deaf. So, yeah, that. Got that going for me. Yeah. Even though I was once in a band. Not a good band, mind you, but a band. All right, Asha, where are you? Oh, Asha, where are you, my friend? 'Cause I'm on here by myself and this is weird. So weird. Yeah, super weird. Real weird. You told me you were getting on early, but I don't see you. So it just makes me look like one of those creeper middle-aged dudes sitting on Instagram Live by myself. Weird. It makes me feel really bad because no friends are actually even joining this. So I don't know if this is even working. I don't know. It says it's live. Who knows? Who the heck knows? You know, maybe, when you watch this or if you see it, but I don't know. Me don't know. Okay, Asha, where are you? Of course, I can't text you because I'm using my phone. Let's have this moment of zen while I wait. Humbada, humbada, humbada. There we are. All right.
You're upset. You're like sideways.
You know what? I will change that. I will be back. Is this not okay to look at
Actually,
like
I
this?
think it's really good. Actually, I think it's probably the best.
It's my best angle.
Yeah.
I'll be back
All
soon.
right. Uh, all right. We're gonna get started here in just a minute when Dr. Asha shows back up the right orientation. Now we're waiting for her. Produce. Asha. Join. Now. I have no magic, apparently. Zero. Zero pull, zero magic. Again, I really wish I had some show tunes that I could sing, and I wasn't so tone deaf. Doop doop doo 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 doo. I guess this is part of the reason this is unique in that the other way we do the conversations with Asha and Steve, we kind of have this backstage thing, but now I'm live and people will see this and they'll be like, why would I pay attention to this dude? He's nuts. It says waiting for you to accept my invitation to join Dr. Asha Prasad. Why are you unable to join? I believe that's a bunch of crap. Boom! How about now? How about now? 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 Are you able to join? Well, this Instagram Live is off to a smashing successful start. I can already tell. I think it's because maybe you left. I don't know. I'm not sure what happened. Come on. Come on. I'm waving at you. I'm saying you're coming to the pool. It's a ripple and hang out. It says it's waiting for you to join still. I swear to God, because we didn't do this on Facebook Live, the Facebook team is sabotaging us. That's what I think's happening. That's really what I think's happening. Come on, Asha. Come in. Come to my Instagram. You can do it. You can be there. Why are you unable to join? What is up, Asha? What is up? Come on. Maybe we should have just kept you like the other orientation. That's what I'm thinking. Oh,
Gotta
I
go.
see. Oh, success.
Am I vertical now and
Yeah.
not horizontal?
Yeah. We already have Kimberly Dykeman with us today. Awesome, Kimberly. Thanks for joining. We appreciate it. And yes, you look perfect, Asha. The right orientation, the right direction. I don't know why IG was giving us a hard time.
It's because, you know what, Facebook is mad at us for not doing it.
You said, hey, we're running a
I
risk.
know.
And
I
now
know, we're running a risk.
we have upset the Zuckerberg. He owns this company. It's like we're still here.
You know what? That's true. That's true. We're still here. We're
We're
just doing
still
something
here.
different.
Yeah, well, so we can start properly. Thank you for
Yes.
joining Conversations with Asha and Steve on Instagram Live. We hope we actually get this recording so we can put it on the podcast. But I am Steve Harper, and with me, as always, is my beautiful co-host, the most amazing, incredible, the whole reason people tune in, Dr. Asha Prasad.
Thank you, Steve.
You're
That's
welcome.
a nice introduction. How are
Yeah.
you today? How are things going?
They are going. It's been an interesting week, busy week. It sounds like after our exchange on email yesterday, you had quite the Thursday. So, but I'm good. How about yourself? I guess I really should ask that question of you because you had
Yeah.
a question mark around Thursday. It was a day, I think, was what you said.
It was a day, but it was a day of a week. So.
Oh wow, that's no good.
No, but it's okay. I mean, you know what? It was just kind of crazy this week. But I was thinking about today, this morning, waking up this morning, this day really, you know what? No matter how long, how many years go by, there
Yeah.
is something about this day that really brings us back
Yeah.
to kind of, a certain place, certain time. And I kind of think when thinking back on it, I'm like, maybe that's kind of what was kind of underlining this week, kind of like the funky energy that was going on or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever it was.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously you're talking about the events that happened on 9/11,
Yeah.
19 years ago today. And, within this kind of time period, everything changed, right? Within these
I
last
know.
several hours, 19 years ago, everything kind of changed pretty
Yeah.
dramatically. And it is unusual. I kind of think actually you're onto something that about the kind of the energy, just the sort of this lead up to this day. It's certainly an opportunity to be reflective. It's an opportunity for us to sort of, remember where we were when that happened.
Yeah.
And I know when we originally first started talking about, well, should we record today? Should we not record today?
Yeah.
And, I'm glad we did. And, I'm kind of anxious to talk about it because I think there's a lot of stories and uniqueness about, how that day affected us as, business owners and leaders. I think it's important. And it's kind of ironic, at least in where we are today, 19 years ago, prior to 9/11, the country was at odds with one another in a lot of ways. And, the world was challenged in a lot of ways because of what was occurring in other countries. And that event just made the community so much more small, right? And certainly pushed pause on everybody's lives. And, not to mention all the people that were affected that day and lost their lives, all the heroes that came out of the stories of trying to, save, the planes and save the, the people in buildings and just the tragedy of it all. But, it did change us, as a society and changed us in our place in the world, I think, in a lot of respects. How do you view that now, looking back 19 years ago to that and how you see it today?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, Steve, I think that it brought us, like it was like an instant, it brought us to our knees. Like it brought us together into this smaller, connected community where we had to pull together. I mean, it just did not matter at any point at that point, what country you're from, what nationality, what, did not matter. It just didn't matter. That was like irrelevant. And it just brought us together in such a way. I mean, unfortunately, through a horrific tragedy like that. And I think that that's what that did. Now, it's interesting now we're 19 years later, and I kind of feel like, with what we've been dealing with the pandemic this year, it's also a big tragedy that's been happening.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like we're dealing with it in a very different way.
Yeah.
There seems to be, from my opinion, more separation, more anger, more frustration, more hatred, there's so much, it's very surreal to look at it that way, because it's like, if anything, we need to come together, and
Yep.
we're not doing that right now. And it's like, okay, what is this teaching us on a humanitarian level, really true humanity? Did we not learn from something that happened just 19 years ago? 19 years ago is not a long time.
No.
I mean, that's really not a long time. Have we not learned anything about community, connection, togetherness, unity? It just seems like we haven't really learned that, unfortunately. And that's very sad to me. I have to say, I was reflecting about that a little bit this morning, and I was very saddened by, I was thinking back to where I was 19 years ago and what was happening. And I can tell you, I'm sure everybody can tell you exactly where you were, what you were doing, what was going on in your life, how you felt, and then what happened as soon as it happened, as soon as you heard or saw it or experienced it, what changed for you. And yeah, so that's kind of the way that I'm viewing that right now. I mean, what would you say, Steve, about, 19 years later, what do you think about what's currently going on and how we're dealing with things?
Well, I mean, I think what you said is very excellent. I think I agree with you wholeheartedly. I don't think we have forgotten it. I think we just, the environment is different. The situations that we're facing in today's world and society is different. I think that we also got, and as you tend to get, very lazy in what we learned in 2001, right? When we could all come together and we had that sense of community, I think there was legitimately, and I've given talks on this, there was really like 3 or 4 years of real unity, specifically here in the US, but I think even within our place in the global community, there was a humanity that we all seemed to share. It didn't matter what your political affiliation was, what your religious affiliation was. There was clearly challenges to overcome at that point. There was a lot of anger. There was a lot of frustration. There was a lot of demonization of certain, groups at the time. Those things are still prevalent, even more so today. But I do remember how different the world seemed, right? The environment and the relationships and the level of connectedness that we had at the time was different. It was something that you could almost, put your hands around and recognize as something significant that you had as a common connection point with another person because they had been through it. There were a lot of challenges. There was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of scared people about what this could do to the country and where, how different things were. I mean, air travel, how we evaluated people coming in and out of the country, whether it was safe for you to travel to other parts of the world. There was a lot of uncertainty, but yet there was still that sense of unity. And I feel like we didn't forget it. I feel like we got lazy. We got apathetic about our approach and how we do it. And I was, quite honestly, I was kind of hopeful that the pandemic would actually bring that back in some regards. And I think to a certain degree it has, but not to the level that I expected. And at the end of the day, we're fighting multiple battles relative to how we are conducting ourselves as human beings on this planet and our place in it. And it's sad. And I feel that sense of loss and that lack of connectivity that I felt like we really demonstrated as a country, specifically the US, about how we could come together and overcome all of those other obstacles that tend to keep us apart. And it makes me sad that we have lost that and that we're not learning from the lessons of the past, which is part of our problem in general, I think.
It really is. And you know what? I agree with you, Steve. It is about laziness or apathy. And we kind of, because things kind of start getting more distant. We could have some really good times, some really
Yeah.
good years, and everything's going well and everything. And I think this happens on multiple levels in our own individual life as well. I
Yeah.
mean, we go through this also as business owners. I mean, it's like you just kind of cruise along and you're like, oh yeah, that's not that big of a problem. But yeah, I agree. There's a sense of loss. There's a sense of that disconnectedness that is so much more palpable now, I feel, than we've probably ever had in our lifetime. That sense of disconnection, that sense of just, people are fighting amongst the things that we have to fight against. We're also fighting amongst each other. It's like we're fighting against each other. And I'm like, okay, we're all supposed to be on the same side.
Yeah.
Like we're on the same side. We're on the same team. So it's it's just one of those things that it's like, yeah, how do we unify? How do we unite again?
Yeah. I mean, we've proven it's possible, right? We've proven that we can do it, but I don't know what that tipping point is to get us back there, because there is so much divisiveness, and I think you see it. For those of you that are watching or may see this on replay, and by the way, if you have questions or would like us to talk about something specific, please drop a question in. We can see those questions, and we'll try and get to those before we end today's episode. But you see it differently because you're a United States citizen, but you chose to leave the U.S. to live in another country, and you've gotten to see things from afar in sort of this. And I wouldn't call you necessarily an expat. We know a couple of those, right? But I mean, you kind of are, because you haven't been here for a long time.
Yes,
even
exactly.
When you do, it's really weird, because even when you do come, you don't actually call me to visit. We just have to see each other on FaceTime. It's weird, but God,
it's weird.
But no, I'm kidding. But you've had this opportunity to see it from a distance, and I'm curious, what are the impressions that you see, there in the in the country you're in? Which, by the way, tell everybody where you're at and what motivated you to move.
Well, I'm located in the Netherlands, and it was really, what motivated me to move. To put it in a nutshell, I was ready for my next growth spurt in life. Because that's exactly what it has been. It's been a growing process. But what's interesting about that, though, Steve, it's very true. And I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday who is also an American, a fellow American, that's been here way longer than I have. And it was interesting because he said to me, Asha, he said, don't you see things, you start to see things much differently. You see it with a wider lens. Because whenever you're in something, you can only see kind of what's around you, and you only look through a certain lens. But whenever you're on the outside looking in, your lens can be as wide as you want it to be, and you can see every aspect. So I do see things very, very differently now, Steve, than I ever did whenever I was living there. And that's one of the reasons why I've also been very saddened by what I have seen, because I'm watching my home country just seems like, from a distance, that it's just falling apart on all levels. And it's like, what is going on? Like, where do we put down the swords against each other? Where do we set the egos? Where do we calm the egos down to say, wait a second, we are actually on the same side? How can we figure out what to do together? How can we really unite, regardless of, your political view, your religious, your whatever it is, regardless of all those things that we label to make us more separate? And so it's very interesting. Yes, that has changed and shifted greatly. And it's confusing for a lot of people here in Europe, because they do not understand what we're doing. They always ask me, they're like, why are you Americans doing it this way? Like, why are you making it so difficult? And I'm like, okay, first of all, I don't represent all Americans. I cannot speak on behalf of everybody, please. So I can only tell you my viewpoint. So it's interesting.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure that everybody kind of looks at it as a right now a dumpster fire or a shit show or whatever label you want to put on it.
All of the above. Yes, exactly.
And it's unfortunate, right? It's I think that there's an opportunity, and my hope is actually, because this is our first 9/11 since this all took place and all this stuff has happened, that it will maybe cause some people today to take a pause and to recognize a couple of key things. One, they're alive, super lucky to be.
Yes.
Two,
Yes.
No matter how dire the consequences or circumstances might be,
Mm-hmm.
we have the possibility to change, and we can,
Yeah.
we, you know, like that old saying says, change starts from within before you can affect
Mm-hmm.
any change in others, right? And I think right now that's what people really need. I mean, you think back to 2001, you know, we didn't have social networks, we didn't have these tools and
Right.
technologies like we do now, and it's easy to spout off, you know, whatever the rhetoric is or whatever you support or don't support or whatever.
Right.
And it becomes real easy for us to hide behind the keyboards. But at the end of the day, when you walk away from that keyboard, you really have to recognize, am I being part of the solution, or am I being part of the problem?
Yeah.
And I think that and my hope is that today becomes a day of reflection so that people actually rethink of that. And, you know, I know we'll get to this, but, you know, there's also a thread of truth in that, in terms of how we act and function as leaders within our organizations and within the groups that
Absolutely.
we have the opportunity to influence. And maybe we haven't done such a great job. Maybe we did forget
Yeah.
the lessons of the past, and maybe there's an opportunity for us to say, look, you know, I haven't been showing up as my best self
Yeah.
now, and haven't for a while. So the nice thing about that is, I tell my coaching clients, I know you do for yours, you know,
Yeah.
that was yesterday. Today is a new day, a new
Exactly.
opportunity, and what you've done to disappoint yourself or led to other people down. Yeah, sometimes you can't unring those bells, but at the end of the day, it's really how you conduct yourself from here forward. And so I
Yes.
think, you know, I hope that somebody walks away with that thought process, and maybe reevaluates what their contribution to all this craziness is right now, and decides to show up and do a better job today, tomorrow, and beyond.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it is about that conscious leadership. It's about that responsible leadership. And I think whereas before, we were always looking up to someone as the leader,
Yeah.
okay? Always looking up to the guru, always looking up to whoever it is. Now we've got to find that within ourselves as
Mm-hmm.
individuals. And I think with that, if everybody can show up that way, then we can band together really strongly.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think that's really important. I just saw there's a comment that
Yeah.
I cannot see who wrote it on my screen anyway. Sorry, Steve. I
Yeah.
can't.
It's Shelly. Shelly is a good friend and a big Rippler. She's awesome. Thank you for being here, Shelly. But she said, we also have to look at leadership styles from 19 years ago today. During 9/11, the message was empathetic and compassionate, which trickled down through the country. Now the message is different. And that's absolutely true.
Absolutely.
You know, how do you perceive the differences, Asha?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. Here's the thing, and that's exactly what we were just talking about, Steve. It's kind of like the way I look at that is that, you know what? Yes, it does trickle. We set our examples. Whether you are an actual leader in a leadership position, management position, leader that where you're influencing a lot of people, or leader of a country, or whatever it is, whether you're that or you are a leader in your community or of your family, whatever it is, we're showing up as leaders. And I think that's one of the things that we need to empower ourselves as individuals, to
Yeah.
look at ourselves as we are leading. It is our time to lead in any way that we can, and show up that way with compassion and empathy. Because in this day and age, I don't think many people are looking up to the actual people that are holding the leader positions,
Yeah.
or looking up to the gurus. I think that those structures are very rapidly dissolving. That kind of, and what I mean by that, as if that they know better.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's like, no, wait a second. You know what? We actually can know some good things too to do together and to
Sure.
band
Sure.
together. Yeah.
Well, and I also think there's an opportunity for people to reflect on the leadership style of today versus back then. The interesting perspective is, I don't think it is all that different. My perception is
Okay.
slightly different than that, because back then we just came through one of the most contentious presidential races in the history of the country, right? And there were people on both sides that were either for or against. We were divided just as badly 2000 into 2001 as we are today, and yet we somehow figured out how to pull our heads out of our hindquarters and figure it out. And part of that is, if you don't see compassion or empathy from the leaders that represent you politically on either side of the party, or even in your own organization or company, it's very much like what you said. It's your responsibility to display that as much as you possibly can in your actions and your thoughts and your words and deeds every single day. And I think that that's one of the challenges that we have is like, well, I can't do anything. I can't possibly impact, any difference or change. And we know collectively that that is not true, right? Change begins with that one person who will stand up a little bit higher than the next person and said, I'm going to stand for something different, and I'm going to conduct my life. I'm going to present myself. I'm going to organize my company and what we deliver and how we deliver it around something better, something greater. And it doesn't matter what political party affiliation that you might have, it's always a creep show. People would like to think, hey, we were in this honeymoon phase like a couple of years ago. Wasn't. I mean, let's just be perfectly honest. It doesn't matter. Politicians have self-interest in their own bullshit they have to deal with, because that's what they are. They're politicians. I mean, shaking hands and kissing
babies. Part of the job.
Yeah. The reality is change is not impacted by that level of leadership. I don't think any government in any country truly has as strong a power as the people do to go out and make a difference. And what I would suggest, and I had a coaching call earlier today, and somebody was, the client that I was talking about was like, what can I do as an individual to be able to make a difference today? Well, reach out to somebody from a different religious faith, somebody that has different points of view from you, somebody that is completely opposite, and show them that compassion and empathy. I didn't use those exact words. I said, show the best parts of yourself by showing that you're caring today. Today is a big, monumental day for a lot of people. It's very heavy mentally. It's very heavy emotionally. Why don't you just reach out and check in with a few people that may be feeling isolated, maybe feeling, sense of trepidation, or may quite honestly just need to hear from someone without any level of judgment, and just say, I was thinking about you. How are you doing? And I would tell you, it really reframed the perspective for her, because she's like, that seems so much more empowering than, going and volunteering at the, at a shelter, or potentially dropping donuts off at the fire station, right? It's the potential for you to recognize in your own world who you probably haven't done a good enough job building a relationship with, or who you've got in dispute, so to speak, and who you could reach out to and say, look, today's a perfect day for me to remember that I could do better. So just a perspective there. So that we have Mr. Jahidi that has joined. This is Ramey's brother, and he is up in Canada. So, So, you remember Ramey from the Ripple days.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
He's a huge fan of your stuff. I see him promoted all the time. So,
Thank you.
Yeah. So anyway, we just, this was kind of an important conversation to have, I think, today. We really appreciate everybody that joined. Any questions that you have, feel free to give them to us on the comment below. We'll see those, and we'll certainly address it. I have a question for you though, Asha. So based on what happened 19 years ago, what impact did that have to you and your journey as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Steve. I think the biggest thing for me was it really shook me to my core of like, what am I doing? What am I contributing in the world? What do I want to contribute? What do I stand for? How do I want to help people? And it really ironically enough, it's probably one of the biggest things that were, at that time, I had a lot of things personally going on as well, when 9/11 happened. And so it was part of my transformation that kind of kicked me into gear to be like, okay, you know what? I need to make sure that I am living consciously, that I am living aware, that I am giving as much as I can every single day and interacting with people in a very deep, concerning, caring, connected, way as much as possible. So it really helped me look at my relationships in my businesses, in also my friendships and family, of course, but really making them meaningful, always looking at, for some reason for me, it kicked into this whole, the compassion piece was very much enriched for me and deepened in the way where I really started looking at from the other person's point of view also, not only from my point of view. For whatever reason, that event really, I don't know, it kind of woke me up in that way. And that has helped me tremendously as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as all the roles that I have. It has helped me because it has allowed me to have deeper relationships, deeper connections, also being able to let things go a lot easier, realizing that there's so much more than maybe what I'm seeing as the little itty bitty problems that happen on a day-to-day basis that I blow up, into this big thing. That stuff just doesn't matter. That life is too precious, time is too precious. So I think from that perspective, and that's kind of what has, what that specific event kind of generated for me, and it's still going on. And I will say, 19 years later, pandemic hits, that deepened a whole new level of skills and of things to say, wait a second, okay, let's step back. What is really important here? Yeah. What do I want to contribute? How do I want to contribute? What is meaningful? What is purposeful? And so that is definitely what I would say, that event 19 years ago just totally changed that for me. How about yourself, Steve? What changed? What was the biggest thing that changed for you?
Yeah, I mean, the underlying theme to what you just said was reevaluation, right? And at that time when it happened, I can remember the morning that it occurred. I had heard something on the radio, because I had a radio on in back in the day before we had internet music. That was what you did. And I heard that, a plane had crashed into the World Trade Center. And at that point, they thought it was a small plane, right? The reports were just, completely unfounded. And there wasn't a big panic. It had happened before. Yeah. People had, or not people, but planes had crashed, in that area. Right. So the first reports we got in Austin were that it was a small Cessna plane, but, it's interesting. So I went back into our conference room and I turned on the TV. And of course, by that point, the Today Show and Good Morning America, they were all covering it. You could tell it was a much bigger situation, but at that juncture, they didn't have any pictures of the plane. They didn't have any real understanding of what occurred, but you could tell just by the damage that something significant had happened. And our team came in, and at the time, we had a pretty close-knit team, but we definitely had some diversity within the organization. Some younger people at the time that were pretty blasé about politics and very they had some uniquely shaped attitudes. Let's just put it that way. My operations manager at the time was kind of an old curmudgeon and, a bit, bit reserved in terms of his emotional intelligence. And then we had this, couple of, individuals that were very heart-centered, very, focused, that were, oh my God, this is, jumping to conclusions immediately about, it was a terroristic attack or whatever. And you just couldn't comprehend that, right? That's something that happens somewhere else. It doesn't happen here. And as the minutes ticked by and it became more obvious, everybody got in the conference room. And I remember Kathy had come in, my wife, she had dropped my son off at daycare, and she said it was just like, people were walking around like in complete shock, right? Nobody knew what had happened and what occurred. And by the time she got there, they started talking about it was a major airline that had gone in. And was this an error, or was this, could this be, somehow malicious intent? We don't know. And then we're all sitting there when the next plane goes into the tower, and
Mm-hmm.
it rocked everybody at the core. And I remember
Yeah.
looking around the room and realizing in that moment how lucky we were to be where we were,
Yeah.
and how fortunate we were, and how grateful I was that everybody was in one spot, and I knew everybody that was related to my company was safe, and uh, not there would be no concern for our safety in that
Right.
moment, right? And then when everything kind of played out, the towers fell, the plane went down in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, the Pentagon. Um, I saw even the most hardened person on my team
Mm-hmm.
change. I saw tears shed by people I would never have in a million years thought
Yeah.
there would have been tears shed. I saw the real true character of individuals come out in that moment, and really in the next following days and weeks to happen. And for me, I think the biggest thing that it really affected me was, you know, where we are, what we're doing, in the here and now is not,
Mm-hmm.
guaranteed tomorrow.
Yeah.
And what I recognized is at that point in that stage of my career, although I was a successful entrepreneur and a business owner and doing quite well, despite some very challenging times initially for that company, we were on the upswing and could see potentially doing that for the next 10 years of my life or more. I
Mm-hmm.
really spent the next, I would say, probably 6 months reevaluating a lot of things in my life and
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out if I was doing what I really was put on earth to do, the purpose,
Yeah.
that I think that I was supposed to have, and it wasn't. And it became very obvious to me that I needed to make some changes in a lot of ways,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
personally, professionally. I needed to push myself beyond my comfort zone and my comfort boundaries, really, and do more. And so. Um, my team at the time didn't know it, but literally within that couple of months, I made the decision I was going to sell that company, and I was actually going to get out of
Mm-hmm.
that industry completely. Not because I
Yeah.
didn't like it, not because I wasn't good at it, but because it wasn't fulfilling. And at the end of the day, I wanted to have more purpose. And so
Yeah.
it's interesting, I credit that time period, dark as it is, to being one
Mm-hmm.
of the driving forces to me becoming a better entrepreneur, hopefully a better leader along the way. And
Yeah.
but I can go back to that conference room. I know exactly what that chair
Yep.
was that I was sitting in, and the shock and awe that we all went through as the situation unfolded. And I'll never forget that for the rest of my life. It definitely was life changing for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. You know what? It's interesting because I don't know if I ever shared this with you that I was supposed to fly that morning. I
Oh
was
wow.
what happened was I was in West Texas at that time, and my mother was very ill at the time, so I was traveling once every 3 weeks to go back to North Carolina. And that morning was I was waiting on a friend of mine to pick me up to take me to the airport. Like I had my bags packed and everything, and I remember him calling me and saying, "Asha, you're not going anywhere. I'm still on my way over, but you're not going anywhere." And I was just like, in the moment of I'm going to be late, I'm going to miss my flight, all these kinds of things. And I'll never forget that. I turned on the television. He just said, "Turn on the television. I'll be there shortly." Turn on the television, and at that time, that second plane went into the tower, and it was just like I thought, what an awful movie to be putting on at
Hmm.
this hour of the morning. Like I was just like, what is this? And it was in that instant. Of course, obviously, I did not fly that day. I did fly the first day that they were able to do flights again. I think that was on the 14th, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember just everything. It was so surreal. You went from, normally you would talk to everybody at the airport and you would talk to people. People were just looking each other up and down like, you stay over
Oh
there. I
yeah.
don't know you. I do not trust you. And I was nervous on the plane. I have to be honest with you. I was just like, oh my God, life has changed forever. But it was in that time that you start to really, it shakes you at your core and you're just like, okay, what am I doing here? what you're talking about. What is fulfilling? What is purposeful? My time is limited. What am I going to do?
Oh yeah.
And and it changes you forever. That is for sure.
Yeah, we flew a couple of days after that. My operations manager and I were going to Talladega, Alabama, to go see the NASCAR race, which they had decided to resume the season, I think, the week prior. And so we were traveling. We had to have a layover in Houston and catch the final flight over to Alabama. And same thing, right? It was the most surreal security experience. It was not like nothing we had ever experienced. Austin and Houston's airport looked like it was a military zone. It was weird. But we get on this flight, and everybody's like looking at each other. There's a lot of suspicion. And a guy literally across the aisle, one seat back from us, starts praying out loud in a foreign tongue. And you see the whole plane just like, oh, Jesus. And it was interesting.
Yeah.
And I remember distinctly, because my operations manager said years later, he had actually told me, like, hey, look, you were a Rippler before you were a Rippler. I saw everybody, and you see people like they just tensed up, and they were like, if that guy gets up, it was the biggest level of discrimination you could ever have.
Yeah.
And those thoughts crossed my mind as well, right? At the end of the day, I must admit. But I remember when he did it, he kind of just did this with his hands, and he just kind of took this deep breath, like he was settling himself. And this is literally as we're taking off. And I just leaned over to him, and I smiled, and I gave him a thumbs up. And I remember distinctly him smiling, people around his aisle smiling. Everybody took like a breath, didn't say a word, didn't talk during the flight. But when we got up to deplane, he reached up and he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, enjoy your day. We're lucky to have it. And it was like, wow.
Yeah.
That level of humanity was pretty significant. And so but to your point, right, everything changed. And I'm not saying that what I did by smiling and giving him a thumbs up changed anybody's attitude at that point, but it certainly didn't help, right? And it's the small things that we can all do in those moments where everybody turns a blind eye or wants to pile on. It's sometimes the people that are willing to step up and say, look, that's not the way we're going to go, right? That can make a difference. And so I don't know. It's just a lesson that has always kind of sat with me. We actually have a question. I want to get to this.
Yeah.
So Mr. Jahidi asked how to succeed as a new leader in this pandemic. It's a great question. And I'm going to let you tackle it. Because you're a phenomenal leader. You're awesome at it.
Oh, goodness. Well, it's a really great question. And yes, this is something that can be quite challenging at this time, but it is, I think that being a leader right now is, there couldn't be a better time, actually, because leadership right now and being a new entrepreneur. Are you a new entrepreneur? Is he a new entrepreneur, Steve? Or
I think he has a new business up in Canada that he's working on.
Okay. So, I think it's about innovation, first of all, being really creative, being really, as far as like how to reach out, how to connect with your customers, potential customers, also taking care of your team if you already have a team, being able to keep the bonds very connected. Because I know one of the challenges right now that a lot of people are going through is that they're not able to go into offices together or to be together, at least not here. Everybody's still advised to work from home as much as possible. So the communication is, via Zoom, via Skype, or whatever it is, which is not a bad thing. We tend to say, well, of course we'd rather be together with each other. Like Steve and I, we'd rather be in the same room together. But hey, you know what? It's about really that clear communication and leading by example, like what we were talking about earlier. I think really holding true to what your why is, what you're doing, what your mission is, and communicating that clearly with your team, so that way you're able to really bring that forward with your customer base as well.
Oh, that's
that would
excellent.
be my advice.
Excellent advice. That's fantastic. I would definitely like to echo a few of those points. I think the unique aspect of where we are right now with the pandemic, I think for leaders is exactly like Asha said, a great opportunity to differentiate yourself and change the rules of the game as it
Yeah.
relates to leadership. I think we are changing everything in terms of how we approach, our product or our service delivery point forward, to how we interact and engage with our teams, how we represent our organizations to our partners and potential customer base. I think everything is up for refinement and reevaluation. And I think from a leader perspective, the fact that you're a new leader in this time period isn't a bad thing. I think it's actually a fantastic thing, because I think that's where the great innovation and the great change that we will see, and we'll look back 5 years from now or 10 years from now or 19 years from now, and we'll come back to this time and say, look how we did this, look what we did, what difference we made. And so I think as a new leader, the best advice I could give you is stay humble, stay hungry, learn everything that you possibly can, and what you don't know. I hear leadership coaches all the time, fake it until you make it. I hate that advice. Admit what you don't know, but seek out the advisors and the guidance of the people who have been there, who have done that, and then ask them for their help. Because I think one thing that we do have as leaders is an abundance of resources that are available sitting at home watching Netflix right now. They have time on their hands, and they're more than willing to share their best advice, their best guidance, but you got to ask for it, and you got to be humble enough to ask for it. I think the biggest mistake I made as an early leader, early entrepreneur, was I always felt this compulsion to always look like I knew what I was doing, even though I knew damn well I did not know what I was doing, because you're technically the business owner, you're the leader, so everybody looks to you to figure, you should have all the answers. And I may be the CEO of a couple of my companies now, but I actually call myself the CDG, the chief dumb guy. I surround myself with the best people. I'm a consummate learner because I want to be able to understand and appreciate what we're doing and where we're going. But I recognize, and I'm the first to admit, I don't have all the answers. And I never want anybody to think that it stops with me, right? And that's why I think as a leader in today's situation with the pandemic, it's an opportunity for you to reinvent what leadership really means. I think it's key. I think it's critical. And I think if you're willing to be open and honest, you will create legacy amongst your team for how great your leadership style ended up being during this very unusual time. So that's my take on it.
Great advice, Steve.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yours was better. So, as always. So, for those of you that are joining us for the first time, this is actually an Instagram live that we are doing that we will record for our Conversations with Asha and Steve podcast. If you're not listening to the podcast, I encourage you to do so, because we are very proud of our conversations that we've had up to this point. I'm very fortunate to have Dr. Asha Prasad take a little bit of time out of her incredibly busy schedule to have a conversation with me every now and then. We have been doing Facebook Lives every 2 weeks, or maybe we just did. Maybe we were going to do it every 2 weeks.
We did one.
we did one like before that. But then we're like, hey, let's change it up, because today is just a little bit different. We started at the beginning of this conversation about what 9/11 has meant to us. I definitely encourage you, if you came in late or you're listening to this on the replay or seeing this video, if we can get it downloaded and up to our YouTube channel, you're seeing that video, go back and listen to some of that. We'd appreciate it. But we definitely appreciate you guys paying attention and tuning into what we're doing with this concept. Asha and I are passionate leaders and entrepreneurs, and we coach other folks that are in their own business environments. We're just super passionate because we've probably made all the mistakes that you don't want to make in business. We've tried to learn from that and be able to provide some guidance and direction along the way to help people along, their journey as entrepreneurs and leaders. And so we're so grateful for people to tune in and listen to us.
Yeah. I want to thank everybody too. It's been great. You know what, Steve and I have been having conversations for years with each other. And so we finally decided, you know what, let's just hit record because we got to share this with people. People, all the conversations that we have with other people, even with our coaching clients and also friends and, whoever it is, we thought we just want to share this information because we are passionate about it and about helping people, helping people succeed in whatever that looks like for them, whatever way. I mean, there's nothing better than feeling more fulfilled and purposeful in your life. And especially, with your business and being passionate about what you do, it's really a gift to be able to do that. If you think about it, you think about a lot of people that are so unhappy with their work life or with their jobs, whatever, their day in and day out. If they, had the courage or had somebody in their corner to help them feel confident enough to take that leap of faith and start their own business. And I mean, it just means the world to a lot of people out there. And those of you that have done it, that are tuning in, you know what we're talking about. And those of you that are thinking about doing it, you know what, there is something else on the other side. There is another feeling on the other side of that.
You mean it's not all fear and trepidation?
Not completely. I mean, there's a little bit of that. I might need to schedule
a coaching client or a coaching consult with you, I guess. Totally kidding. I mean, I would, if you can squeeze me in. I mean, but you're absolutely right. There is feelings on the other side once you start to see the benefits of all that hard work and all that effort, and you start to recognize that the difference that you're making with whatever it is. And by the way, you don't even have to be an entrepreneur. You may just be an internal leader within an organization or a team, and that's perfectly fine. And but it's all about making a difference, right? It's about making kind of impact that you possibly can make wherever you are. And we just happen to try and talk about leadership and business ownership and entrepreneurship because that tends to be a lot of the feedback that we get in terms of what people want to talk about and want to hear us talk about. So, but Asha, tell them if there are other topics they would like to see us have a conversation about, how they can get a hold of us.
Yeah, so definitely you can go to our website, conversationswithashaandsteve.com, or find us on Facebook, our Facebook page, or us individually. My website is theprasadmethod.com, and I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and kind of pretty much everywhere, just like Steve.
We have a Conversations with Asha and Steve Instagram account too, right?
Yes, we do. That's right.
I can't figure out how to log into it, but I know we have one.
But we do have it. So if you see anything on there, it's probably me putting it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, Steve.
Yeah, she's totally not kidding. That's absolutely 100% accurate. I can't keep up with all these logins. What do you want me to do? I'm like, I own 2 software companies. I mean, I'm not supposed to know anything about technology.
Oh my gosh.
That's why I hire great people. Like and I partner with great people like yourself. So it works out for me. It pays off.
It's a team effort. It is a team
effort.
Steve, tell people how they can contact you as well, your website, and where they can find you.
Absolutely. My website is ripplecentral.com. You can find me on most social networks at Rippleon, RIPPLEON. I mean, I post a Ripple Thought of the day for those people that follow me on Twitter, and I try and put good, positive things out on Facebook, although that's going to drastically change because it's now football season. So there will be a lot of smack talking on that, just so just giving you a heads up, right? So, but no, that's how you get a hold of me.
Yeah, no, great. And we would love to hear from you. Anybody that has any questions or any comments or anything that you'd like for us to cover or, anything, just contact us through any of those channels.
Yeah, and let us know just by telling us, find us on one of the social platforms. Let us know if we should be doing Instagram lives or we should be doing Facebook lives. Apparently you can't do both. So at least pick. If somebody out there knows how to do both, let us know, because otherwise it just gets really crazy. But which one you would like to see us? Asha and I tend to record these every 2 weeks. And like we said, we're doing them live and taking those recordings and putting them on our podcast because We've actually grown in audience because people like to see Asha's pretty face on the screen. And
That's not you, Steve. Did we
Sorry, I
lose you,
just got a
Steve?
call. I think somebody was calling me to tell me to shut up. I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Let me put my thing back in.
sorry about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was getting a call. So I don't know why I'm on Do Not Disturb, but anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, so people tune in to see Asha more so than me, but I'm happy to be her co-host and sidekick. So we do appreciate you tuning in, and as always, you know, be sure to go back and listen to some of our older episodes and check out some of our videos. I don't know if you mentioned we have a YouTube channel, right? That's where our videos
That's
go up.
right.
So
We do.
yeah, you can
Yeah.
find that under Conversations with Asha and Steve as well. So as always, everyone, we really
Perfect.
appreciate it. Don't forget to take a moment today to
Yeah.
recognize, you know, the significance of today and what it means, and maybe be that one person that will go out and make a difference today, because I think the world needs you to do so.
Definitely.
All right. Take care, Asha. It's good to see you.
All right. Thanks. You too,
All
Steve.
right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.